Hi, thanks for joining me. Jim Melcher for Desert Owl Media. We're closing out today our interminable discussion of my tips on black and white development. I just had a few points that occurred to me after finishing the series, and I've been promising a wrap-up, so here it is. First thing I didn't mention is I think it's really important to be playing music in the room when you're doing your developing. It helps the flow, it seems to me. And I'm saying that's in the when you're printing, maybe a little more so when you're printing, but when you're developing as well. And resist the temptation to listen to a podcast. Sorry, Mike Gutterman, but anything like trying to put together a sequence of somebody's thoughts. Audiobook maybe is even worse. Even listening to sports, it's a little bit easier with sports because you can always pick up later what you missed. Music is the ideal to keeping your mind concentrating on what you're doing, enjoying the process, and in a way sometimes freeing you up to try something that you hadn't tried before. You get inspired a little bit sometimes by the music. You probably noticed in at least one of these videos that I wear an apron when I do my developing usually. That's actually a fairly late adaptation. I maybe have only been doing that for 5 years. Just, I don't know why I didn't before. I've seen lab coats, and I'm looking forward to when I have a lab coat for all my darkroom work. But for now, it's just the apron. Always, then you can be wearing something that you wouldn't want to get spilled on and not have to change just because you're going to jump into the darkroom when you get the chance. The apron really makes that doable. I thought also, I came across, I can't remember what I was searching for, some pictures for my daughter in my archive. I thought I'd share with you a couple examples of what I thought were reticulation. I'll show you here. First is a picture of a power line tower. Hat tip to Johnny on the old Classic Lenses podcast. He loves pictures with power lines, and he'd really love my work. So anyway, I was in the power line business, so I did a series on power poles, transmission towers. This one here, if you zoom in on the sky here, it really is clear. It's kind of an interesting, almost a decal pattern, or maybe like what you'd expect on a dried bacteria plate in the microscope or something, I don't know how else to describe it. It almost looks though like it's a pattern you'd find on a tile or old tile floor or something. Then here's the sky again. I think this is Denver Airport. Wow. That's a mess. So anyway, for your enjoyment and for your edification, there is some reticulation, and as I indicated when I was talking about it, it's kind of a cool effect. If you knew how to use that and how to cause it with some precision, it'd be kind of cool. Sure, you could probably make a filter out of this in Photoshop or something. That'll be the next cool thing, is to be making your pictures photo-like by putting a Photoshop reticulation filter on there. All right. So I think it's important when you're setting up your darkroom to have some various ways of measuring, right? You're going to have to raid some old darkroom or go to your photo store, but the absolute minimum to me are a 500 milliliter graduated beaker with a handle, like a measuring cup kind of deal, a 1 liter, one of the tall, narrow beaker, and a 10 milliliter, just 10 milliliter graduated cylinder. They're quite small. I've only got a glass one. I'm not looking forward to the day I finally break that. They probably make them out of plastic. I'm sure they do. And then a measuring spoon. And you can really, if you've got your 10 milliliter graduated cylinder, you can take any measuring spoon and just measure what that is and get a sense. This is, for me, I'm using that to mix the Photo Flo. And I think I'm going to make a video all about measuring. So this is just a slight introduction to that. When you are pouring your chemicals into the tank, it's a good practice to be pouring with one hand, holding the tank in the other, and swirling the film around. You It doesn't have to be dramatic, but I think it's good if you imagine that chemical rising up against the film. If you're swirling it around a little bit, it's never really favoring any one part. The bottom parts are always going to be favored. If there's any marginal effect as it goes in, you're disguising it by swirling. I think it's an easy thing to add to your practice. It's actually, good. I'm always swirling with my offhand. I'm left-handed. I find that I can pour better with my left hand, and I'm really good at swirling with my right, which has surprised me when I thought about it. I'm not so good at swirling with my left, which I found really weird. So you'll probably have a similar experience if you try. I want to say that this and the following tip, I'm pretty sure the first time I adopted them, it was right after seeing a video by Tim Layton. Give Tim a shout out here on that. The last tip is about rinsing your equipment. So you're rinsing to store, or you're rinsing to introduce a new chemical, or when you're rinsing the fixer before I start to really do the wash, because I feel like you don't want to be washing with fixer. So get all the fixer out of there first. So those rinses, I figure it's at least 2 vigorous shaking washes. 3 is better, and I don't think a 4th is necessary. All right. I really am careful to count when I'm washing the Photo Flo out. And that is because you'll notice sometimes bubbles in the beginning of your process. Say you're pouring out the developer and you look and you see bubbles coming out. It's probably because you didn't rinse the Photo Flo enough. Since I really took after this, I've never seen it again. I've never had this problem. So being very conscious of washing out your Photo Flo. And also I think at least once I've noticed in my results that it almost looked like in the developer, the bubbles were having an effect, like you were seeing bubbles. And they're not bubbles that are going to go away when you go bang, bang. You always be banging your bubbles out while the film is resting between agitation. I never had that as a separate tip, but there you have it. Always bang or clang your your tank between agitations to get any bubbles that had formed, just normal air bubbles. But I think I've seen in my results bubbles on the negatives when it was done. And I think it probably was due to not having washed out the Photo Flo properly. All right, I said this would be short, and it is, I hope. That closes out my series on top 10 tips of black and white developing, or what I wish they'd told me when I started to develop. You can look forward to a video on measuring and the way to get simple ways to get from ounces to milliliters. I probably should show, in fact, maybe I'll insert right here, I'm using an old iPod Touch with a timer on it, and I should probably do a little on that, but it's just called timer, and you can set all your timers in there with names that'll stay on there until you go back. Then I think I'm going to have a video where we go out to like a dollar store and see how much gear for the darkroom you can get at the dollar store. Because I think sometimes you're like, well, I mean, where am I going to get this stuff? I don't necessarily want to buy it all new, but some of the stuff I won't necessarily find quickly used. How much can you find new at the dollar store? And what does it cost? Anyway, I look forward to any comments, and thanks for watching. See you next time.